Well, hello, Mr. David Seekman. How are you?
Hello, KDP. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm excited
Excellent.
to go record our September podcast.
Me too.
So, this podcast is all about how agencies can be more efficient and effective. And we're going to take a little spin on it where I'm going to tell you my favorite efficiency hack for service team members, and you're going to focus on the sales side, right?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. So, you know that like September is one of my favorite months, right?
It is. Why's that?
I call it second New Year's.
Because the summer's over, everyone's coming back. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, like during the summer, I think it's so hard to figure things out. Like people are overwhelmed, stressed out, short-staffed. Everyone wants to just be outside drinking beers at the ocean. This is a problem. We all get happy feet. And then like the kids go back to school and like we get back to work too, right?
Yeah, agreed. Especially in the northern states. I
Yeah,
feel like in the south, they just work all the time, like work all summer, because they don't want to be outside. It's too hot.
totally.
Whereas up here, we get like 3 months of good weather, so nobody's in the office.
And everyone has to run home to mow their lawns because, you know, while we have the like terrible winters, we care about our lawns so much that we do not hire landscapers like the rest of America in warm states. It's kind of counterproductive to
Agreed.
me. But no, it's like kids go back to school. Everyone's in a routine. Instead of like drinking beers on the back patio, everyone's doing homework with kids. Like life just gets back to normal. And
Yeah,
I'm very excited for
I agree. The nice thing about August too, though, is I feel like August is like the September setup, right? Like everyone's like, oh, September is coming. I have to like actually think about getting back to work. So I did
that.
like August too.
And then we go into October, which is like personally my favorite month, not business wise, because first of all, I get to wear sweaters. And yeah, I love sweaters.
I never wear a sweater.
Well, I do, so I'll wear them for you.
Okay.
You know, I think the other cool thing is everyone going to get to the end of year planning mode.
Sure.
So we start kind of thinking about things. We look at what we did, we didn't accomplish, and then lots and lots of agents start calling us saying, hey, we need to work together, you know, the end of this year to end strong and into next year. So that's also a really good reason why I like that time of year.
And I agree because it's the middle of football season and the World Series is on.
Yeah, it's a great, I mean, there's no better time.
And hockey and basketball is just starting up too. So everything's you hit everything there.
Exactly. And so we're not practicing our own roles of being efficient and effective and going on a tangent with podcast viewership. So, you know what, I think we should just kind of get into it. You know, what do you think?
Let's do it.
Okay.
So let me ask you, so let's start on your side of the house a little bit, right? So when you go into agents and you're working with like the service team, what is like the number one thing that you see where you're like, this is not being effective and this is not being efficient with your time?
I'm going to use the remarketing.
Again and again and again.
Lather, rinse, repeat, like a shampoo bottle. We just see so much remarketing happening, and it's a combination. Like if you think about like why does it happen, right? Well, a lot of agencies are reactive, so we're not controlling the conversation, and a lot of clients' accounts are simply inaccurate. Their businesses or personal lives have changed, and the agency's not kept up with it. And so they get this renewal rate in the mail, and we have to remember it's people's perceptions of what they should pay. So I had like the greatest conversation with my husband the other day because one of our insurance renewals came in, and you know he gets all like spicy little Italian meatball on this stuff, and he's like, "We pay too much for insurance. Every insurance bill, we just get bills and bills and bills, and we don't ever use it. We're safe, and we shouldn't have it." And I'm like letting him go off and do his thing. And so then I looked at him, Dave, and I go, "What should we pay for our insurance?" And he had to think for a second, and he goes, $13 a month.
That's impressive. You actually had a number. Most people go, I don't know.
Completely irrational, like right for our home. And he, by the way, my husband is like a car fetish, and he's got like, we got 4 cars for 2 people. I'm like, yes, $13, completely irrational. Let's do it. Let's go find somebody who's going to charge us $13 a month.
Name your price, right?
Well, and that was like, that's like the epiphany was like, people have a perception of insurance prices. It doesn't even mean that it's rational. It doesn't mean it has to go up. It just means that we need to control the conversation. And so,
Right.
you know, when things change and over time bills change, you just sort of have to stay in front of it. So what we find too often is like three common routes of remarketing, right? The first one is the automatic remarket. So maybe your management system or the download tells you the rate's gone up. So we automatically remarket it. We don't talk to anybody. We don't look and do, you know, we might look to see if they had an accident, but like legit, it's just throw it through the radar or, you know, send it out to other companies and let's see what happens. And Dave, I mean, I don't know what you think, but that to me is like the ultimate waste of time.
Absolutely.
You know, and so, you know, why is that so inefficient in your opinion, Dave?
Well, I think that we make the mistake. I see this in a lot of agencies that we assume that the client wants to be remarketed, right?
Right.
So even when we talk to them, I feel like we jump into well, let's remarket you instead of like, let's discuss other ways we might be able to save you money while keeping you with the same client. But I guess my inefficiency meter skyrockets on that because we know that we're not going to always talk to everybody that we work on, right? Whether we're talking about renewal calls, automatic remarketing, any effort we put in before we talk to somebody, some of that effort's going to be wasted because people, little secret, right? Worst kept secret in insurance, people don't want to deal with their insurance. So even if you call them and say, hey, we remarketed your account, you're still not going to get everyone to call back. So you're putting an effort with some chance that none of those people are ever going to talk to.
And then we miss the idea that somewhere along the way of those 4 years or whatnot that they've been with that market, that things have changed, right? Like they redid their basement. They got Fluffy the pit bull, you know, like
the triplets got their license.
Yeah, like we just assume everything's the same. And so you just spend all this time remarketing because like account managers have a fear of delivering bad news. So it's much easier, yet inefficient and not effective for me to call you and be like, hey, Dave, great news. Saw your rate come in. It went up a little bit. So I remarketed to you and here's your new price.
Right.
That is like delivering the solution because I don't want to have this uncomfortable conversation with you, Dave, about how things have changed and how we want to take a look at it together. I'd rather just cut to the chase, give you a solution. And then you know what I just did to you, Dave? I made it all about price.
Right. You're perpetuating the biggest problem we have in our industry, which is all the big boxes are telling us it's about price. We're trying to have a conversation about value, but we're leading with price. So we're doing the same thing.
Yeah. And so that's the first number one, the automatic remarket. It's a waste of time. It piles up and we haven't communicated to the client at all. So that's number one.
Number one.
The number two efficiency in remarketing is the client calls in like a little spicy pepperoni, right? All hot under the collar. My rates, this, you people, I saw you built a new building. That's why my rates went up. What the heck? My car is older. My life is older. Everything's better. What is wrong? And
my neighbor's paying.
Yes. And then they come at you, and account manager who struggles to have difficult conversations sometimes is like, no problem, I'll reshop you. And then instead of just keeping them on the phone, because especially in personal lines, we can use the raters to just firm up some information and take care of it in that call. We get off the call. Then more calls come in. Little hamster on a wheel. Remarket sits. Dave, you, my client, growing in intensely anger, right? But you're thinking, I'm thinking in my head, account manager, they don't renew for 30 days. I've got time because I'm using my timetable, not Dave's timetable, right? So Dave is frustrated and growing in anger and probably shopping his insurance. Again, not efficient, not effective, because efficient and effective would have been on that call, work to remarket you, potentially start with a review, if need be remarket you and answer your question right then and there. But now Dave is coming back at me when I call back 2 weeks later, like, why did it take so long? I've got 3 other quotes that smoke all of yours, and I want to hear about how much coverage isn't the same.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So how much more work was that on you?
Yeah, exactly. And I think you made the point too. The other problem there is that they're not doing the review, right? Here, what I find is this. I'm not saying that no clients, and I know commercial lines are a little bit more familiar with the term remarket, but most of the time when the client calls in, even when they are upset, they're not necessarily looking to get a rate from a different company. They're worried, they're upset about premium. But we jump right into the remarketing because that's the easy way to reduce the premium. Instead of having the conversation about what's changed, what might be inaccurate, how are there other ways we can save money, deductibles, discounts, billing plans, having those conversations are so much more effective and efficient than just diving into the remarketing for somebody who's just complaining about their premium, not asking to be moved, not I'm upset with this company, I just want to save money.
Correct. And then like the third bucket we see on the remarketing is that we remarket someone, and because we don't do it timely, or the end result is I email you, Dave, my quote, and I'm so proud because I've been able to save you $800, right? Because you asked, right? So now I did my job. 2 weeks later, I email it to you. 1, you don't know what you're looking at. 2, I emailed it to you so you could send it off to a whole bunch of other people. 3,
Right.
I just sent an upset client in an email versus calling them up and talking them through the situation. So then in Dave's head, he's like, I had to ask for this. How long have I been paying too much? And I got an email where all I'm going to look at is the price. And all the account managers out there can tell me how they write these beautiful, glorious, detailed quote emails. No one reads it. Okay.
Agreed. We'll talk about this when we get into the sales side and emailing quotes too, but I always say when you email a quote, you might as well not attach anything. You might as well not even have anything in the body of the email. Just put the premium up in the subject line and hit send, because that's all the client cares about. So just shoot it off, give them the number, and then sit back and not move the account, not sell the policy.
And then my life becomes more efficient as the account manager, right? Because you call in like, what's this? I've got questions. I've got other quotes, WTF, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm going back and forth, but every time the phone rings, I've got to drop everything, where I could just pick a phone call and say, Dave, I'm going to shop this for you. What time tomorrow can we connect on your options? Now I have the opportunity to have dialogue with Dave, calm him down, explain the situation, give him options, which one of them might be staying with his current company, and here's why.
Right.
But we make our lives so much more complicated by emailing quotes, automatically remarketing people without them being asked, and then just, not having that dialogue and not being able to defend the rate. That the ultimate kind of culmination is I look at remarketing like a big sieve, like you're putting water in, and some of it stays there, but most of it's falling out because there's so many inefficiencies in it. And I'm not saying that it doesn't have a time or place for people, but I look at it as it's your decision as the professional that that's the tool in the tool chest that is right to use.
Right.
And if we're going to use it, we're going to use it the right way. We're going to get the best result from it. And we're going to go ahead and make sure that people understand it. But when we start reshopping people, we put them with the cheapest, what happens next year? That company is not the cheapest. They take the biggest rate hike, and we're doing a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right. And we've encouraged them to shop. Not just to other people, but even with us. So now next year, they're like, hey, it's all about price. Even my agent's telling me it's all about price. Let's do it again.
Absolutely.
So 3 buckets. So we got automatic remarketing, right? We have letting people off the phone instead of quoting them for those lines that you can quote on the phone. And we have emailing quotes. So can you just summarize our solution on those 3?
So no more automatic remarkets. We do not remarket unless we speak to somebody, because you need to get updated information.
Agreed.
That's that first one. The second one is, someone calls in, we remarket it, and we really don't do the review. We don't become proactive. So my goal is be proactive. Call people. Call every single client, okay? Every single client once a year for a review. And I know everyone at their desk might be fainting at the idea of it. It saves you time, effort, and energy. I've proven this. Dave has proven it all across the country and Canada. People do not want to go back. We have a 97% rating. When people launch doing this, they do not want to coil back to their old ways. So take that from your peers. And the final one of not emailing quotes is really just this: pick the time when I'm on the phone with Dave and say, Dave, what time can you do it? Now, ultimately going back to one of those buckets where we talked about doing reshops on the phone is plan A is to keep Dave on the phone. It doesn't take that long. You've already got them in the rater. You need to update information, get the rating quotes. Now everyone's looking at me like, Kelly, they're inaccurate. Yes, you need a preliminary one, okay? Let's get a buy-in to move forward. And then you can go firm them up. And it takes time. It takes the ability to have small talk. But otherwise, what we're doing is we're just literally perpetuating that quote getting pushed off. And then you don't have to email it because we're going to deliver it right on the phone. Now, the other pushback we get to that, right, Dave, is people want to see the quote. They need to see it in front of them. Yes, there is a certain percentage of the population, like 20%, that would like to see something, which you will email after. But 80% of the population say, great, let's move forward. And you get their buy-in right there. You minimize objections. They can't go shop anywhere else. You get their buy-in, and we move forward versus that delay.
Yeah, I think most account managers they're the ones that want to see the quote, so they project this onto the client. Well, I would want to see it, so they would want to see it. Mm-hmm. Well, not all people are kind of geared the same. So you're emailing that quote out to 100% of the people when only 20% really care.
Yeah, and let them ask for it if they want it.
Right. And I don't have a huge problem with people emailing quotes after you've had the opportunity to present it and go through the options, mm-hmm. right? So by giving them the options, they have the ability to help build the quote. Now I have some buy-in. Now if they ask me to see it, that 1 out of 5 people, now I'm more comfortable because I've had the ability to present it on the phone.
Well, that, and it's like, would you rather email a quote or an app?
True.
So like by doing that, we put an extra step in, and then we got to the app where if I just get, yeah, that sounds great, Kelly. Great. I'll email you the application, which by the way has the same information in it if you also want to see it. But he's telling me yes. Why am I adding a step in that's not efficient and not always effective?
Right. Yeah.
So,
and if you email that quote, even the person who might be borderline, now you've given them the opportunity. You could be done with this. You can move on. So you've taken another step even closer to the end, because I might not be sure, but then when I get the email, I might just say, all right, fine, and then just do it. Instead of getting the email and be like, okay, I'll do it. Now I'm going to email you back, so give me the app. And now by the time I get back to that next email with the app, maybe my mind has changed.
Yes, and make sure you're sending it electronic signature. If your agency does not have electronic signature, I highly recommend everybody jump into that boat, because you'll start to see apps come back so fast.
Yeah, because people want to be done with it. They don't want to have to print it and sign it and scan it. They don't want to have to print it and mail it. They don't want to do any of that stuff. Make it easy, effective. They'll do it.
So Dave, I've just pontificated about the service side. How about the sales side? Where do you see the biggest inefficiency and ineffectiveness?
Well, we talk about this a lot. So when we're talking about sales, the number one thing that I see is that there is no sales process. So before we can really start to drive effectiveness and efficiency in our sales process, we need to have a sales process. That make sense?
Yep, absolutely.
So I think that the first thing you have to do is create a sales process. So this includes, the system you're going to use. This includes your follow-ups, the method of follow-up. So you want to make sure that you're consistently, you have the same process and you're having the same conversations with people when you do get them on the phone, that you're building rapport, you're showing your expertise, building trust, all of those items. So I think that's where I always start. That's my number one. That's the easy one, right? That's the one where everyone goes, okay, that one makes sense. I can almost get everyone to buy into the idea that creating a sales process will help you sell more. Absolutely. That's kind of the easy one. The other two, as you know, are the ones that get tomatoes thrown at us when we do presentations, right? And I can see the crowd go, oh, when we drop the horror, the humanity. So the first thing is that we do not need a deck page to build a quote.
Stop it.
It's true. It's
what
true.
If it's not apples to apples?
Apples to apples. Honestly, apples to apples might be my most hated term.
I agree.
Yours is busy. Mine is apples to apples. I could do a monologue for hours about apples to apples.
Well, the dumb thing about apples to apples is there's like 700 different versions of apples.
Right. Well, and the thing that drives me the most crazy about it is that I'm trying to convince you that I should be your agent. I'm the expert. I know what I'm talking about. So can you show me what you already have built with somebody else? Because I'm just going to copy what they did. It
Right,
literally
we
makes no
know.
sense.
Like we know by the renewal process that that agent hasn't updated anything in like a decade to begin with. And so like, why am I going to take somebody else's half-baked, terrible work? I couldn't agree with you more.
And there's a reason why they're shopping their insurance, right?
Right.
They called me for a reason, or I called them, and they're willing to have a conversation with me. There's something about their existing policy that they disagree with. Now, the other side to that too is not only is what they currently have might be half baked from the agency perspective, but if I'm the client, I don't know what I should have and what I shouldn't have. So we hear this all the time. Especially, this is more when you do endorsements, but they say same coverages, right? Say, oh, just the same coverages. Oh, just send me the same thing. It's a different way to say apples to apples. But now I'm reliant on the client telling me what coverage he should have. You know, I know that in law there's like that saying, what is it? A lawyer who has a client. What is it? A client who has a lawyer. What is it? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
No idea.
All right, maybe I'll just move on from it. A client who represents himself has a fool for a lawyer. No, a lawyer who represents himself as a fool for a client. That's what I'm trying to say. So anyway, my point is this. We don't tell the lawyers what they should be doing. We don't tell our accountants. We don't tell our doctors, right? We let them tell us what is wrong or how to fix the problem. Mm-hmm. We should be doing the same on the insurance side. We are the experts. We should be telling the client what coverage they should have.
I totally agree. And then there's like the extra steps, right? So you're pitching me, Mr. Salesperson, and you're going to tell me now I've got to go find my deck page, scan it, email it, call my agent. Honestly, I'm like, next, you sound like it's really inconvenient. I can go on personal lines and small commercial. I can go online and get a quote without needing to do all this stuff. Forget you.
Exactly. The other argument that I hear is that, well, we only want to quote people that are serious about bringing on business, right? So I know if I ask them to send me a deck page, now they're committed, now that they're serious. What do you think about that one?
Oh, this I will tell you a good phrase that I heard recently at an agency that we've had a long time partnership with. He bought another location and he's like, listen, God himself couldn't get a quote there if he tried. He's like, seriously, they would call people back and be like, yeah, listen, we're slammed. Can you call us back next week?
Awesome. Let's just put additional selling insurance is hard enough. Let's throw additional obstacles on top of it and make it nearly impossible to write new business.
God himself couldn't get a quote.
That's great. Okay, so those are two, right? So first we have to have our sales process. Second, we're not going to require a deck page.
Correct.
Right? And then number three, and we talked a little bit about this, but I want to bring it back up, but similar to presenting the quote when you're remarketing, you 100% should be presenting the quote either in person or over the phone on a new business. And a lot of the reasoning is the same way, right? If I just email them the quote, they're just going to look at the premium. I'm going to waste all this time writing up this huge thing. So I think that's a huge component to it. The other thing, and this is, again, true for both the remarketing and for the new business, is that when you engage with the client to build it, then they're more likely to buy it because they helped build it. So I can present options when I'm talking to a customer. And this doesn't necessarily mean that I have to present them with 3 quotes from 3 different companies. We're just talking about having them have a say in how they build it. So do you want this deductible? Do you want that deductible? You know, do you want accident forgiveness or do you not want accident forgiveness? What are you going to do for a billing plan? All of these small options that we can present. I'm not saying present 20, 40 limits and 250, 500, but small differences like the ones we're talking about here, where I don't really care if you have a $500 deductible or a $1,000 deductible. It doesn't mean any difference to me, but I'll let you pick. Now you're invested. So I'm using my experience, my expertise to create the quote and present to you what I know you need from a high level for the more important items. But for the less important items, I'm letting you help build it Now I've got the buy-in. And now I can say, and I can also ask you for the business.
Mm-hmm.
So now you've helped build it. I can ask you for it. Now we're at that point where nobody's saying, send me a quote. They're saying, send me the app.
Absolutely. And that seems like it wouldn't have quotes sitting on people's desks, which we know decreases the effectiveness of being able to sell the policy, right?
Right. Absolutely. And it's more efficient because instead of sending you the quote and then just sitting there waiting, or now having to follow up with you after I've already given it to you, I can say, how's tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock?
Yeah.
Now I know exactly when I'm going to quote. I've established the time. I'll say I need 20 minutes of your time. Now I've established that from 10 to 10:20, I'm going to be on the phone with this guy. Instead of calling and following up and then catching him at a bad time, or him calling me back and I'm at lunch. So there's this whole back and forth. So the effectiveness is absolutely there because I'm getting the buy-in, but the efficiency is as well because I'm dramatically reducing my follow-up effort.
So Dave, I feel like on this podcast, we may have sent people into panic attacks in some parts of the regions of the clients and the insurance agencies out there.
Wouldn't be the first time.
And I know we know this because we could do a lot of speaking, then, you get that reaction of what? Right. And I think I want to just spend a minute or two identifying that there are some very traditional notions in insurance and that that's okay. And that at one point in time, not having a deck page was a sign that this person was maybe not as qualified as a lead. But as things have changed, as technology's gotten better, the ability to quote over the phone, all these things have developed to become easier. I just want to encourage people to try. I'm not saying that, 100% of the time you don't want to get a deck page. If you have a home with a client with 5 homes and 16 cars, that might be the quickest and easiest way to get over the information that you need, versus going the onesie twosies. But for the standard average accounts, take what we say is the 80-20 rule. Plan A should be not to get a deck page.
Right.
Plan A should be not to quote over the phone. If we can't set a time, that's plan B. We're really talking about 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, let's try to move towards this direction, because on the flip side, every producer I know and every account manager I know, their biggest complaint is being too busy, right? So we're circling back to my favorite word.
Right.
And so what we have to do, and this was the topic of one of my blogs, one of my sort of bandwagon things I've been saying lately, is that there's problems and there's excuses. A problem is something we're aggressively working towards a solution on. So if you're nodding your head, I'm too busy, I'm too stressed out, take these strategies and try them for 30 days. Don't say, I'm just too busy, I can't deal with it. Instead, solve your problem. But an excuse is, I'm too busy and I'm not going to listen to anything they say because they're not right, and I'm not even going to try it. Would you agree with that, Dave?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the way that you word it a lot, and I like it, is, an excuse is just describing the problem over and over and over and over again, not actually talking about solutions. We could just, I'm too busy, I don't have time. There's a million ways to say this isn't working right now because I can't fit everything I'm trying to accomplish in the same day.
And then I take it one step further. They're saying, I'm too busy. But then you bring a solution and they think about the 0.01% of the time it will not work. And I'm like, guys, but if it worked 80%, if it worked 50%, right, you'd still be better off. But we think about Mr. Miller and when he comes into the office. I'm like,
I feel like we need to put a caveat on every piece of advice that we give, which is this will not work 100% of the time. I don't think there's anything that I've ever tried to develop in this arena where I'm like, this is perfect, it's going to work 100% of the time. There's always going to be that one, those two, that family. That is always going to be out there. So I don't know if we should start every podcast and blog with that message. We know it's not 100%, but like you said, try it and see if it gets better. It's really just about improving. It's not about achieving perfection.
But really try, because the first time you do anything, it's going to be a disaster, right? The first time I'm like, I don't need a deck page is when all things, break loose. Or I say, I'm going to call you tomorrow with a quote, and they say, well, email it to me. You got to try it for something for 30 days to make it stick, to make it work. But I really believe, based on my experience, Dave's experience, going into agencies and doing these things, that at the end of the day, if you try them and you don't just like try them, you commit to them, they're going to work. Like it's logic. When we explain it very logically, like we did on this podcast, it's like, oh, that makes sense. But we got to go back to our desks and implement it.
Right. It's all about the implementation and the commitment. And I would also say too, is if you don't like any of these suggestions, I think that's cool and fine. But like, what are you going to do differently? So these won't work. What do you think will work? What will you do differently to avoid the I'm too busy, I don't have time, I'm not making sales, I'm spending time remarketing. So if you don't think these solutions are right for you, figure out another solution. But whatever you decide to do, implement it and commit to it for a while. And like you said, truly in your heart, commit to it. Don't just try it and be like, no, it didn't work because you didn't really want it to.
I couldn't agree with you more. Well, Dave, you've been an awesome podcast co-host today.
Oh, you too, pal.
I think this is one that everyone should sit down and watch with their staff. So take a look, listen. Can't wait to meet you guys next month with another podcast for your listening/viewing pleasure. And as always, if you have any comments, make sure you get in touch with us. We'd love to talk to you about these topics. But until our next podcast, have a wonderful month, and we'll talk to you in October.